Hi guys and welcome. So in this video, which will be part 1 on this Mustang respray, what we're going to be doing is the primer work on this. So it's all been repaired up. It's not a really expensive job, the customer just wants a nice flash over on it just to make it look nice for him again. Ideally a job like this, it'd be really nice if we could take it back to bare metal, but the budget isn't there for the customer's point of view. So we're using a 4:1 high build primer, and all we're going to do first is we're just going to pop a light coat over the repaired areas and some of the breakthroughs and some of the bare bits, and then let that flash right off. What this will do is when it flashes off, basically this primer is going to soak right the way into the repaired areas and into the filler, dry, and then once it's dried it's going to seal all those up and prevent the chance of the primer shrinking back. So the first coat's going down now, and then what we're going to do is we're going to give this, I'd say, 10 to 15 minute flash off time. That'll mean that this primer will soak in nicely to all those repaired areas and give it a good time to dry down and start to go hard, so that when the next coat goes over it, it's not going to start sinking in and the filler's not going to start sucking it up. So it's not going to leave those initial shrink back areas there, which will just aid it along the process. So as you can see, like most of the car at the moment, I'm just missing out. I'm just giving it a real quick flick round over these spits of stopper and over these really bad breakthroughs. It'll just help it in the long run. And then what we're going to do then is we're going to put 4 real good thick heavy coats over the whole car. So when this is all then dried down and cured, what we'll do then is we'll get the 240 on the long block and then the P400 on the DA afterwards with the interface pad, just to remove the 240 marks from the long block. So that way we can try and get the car a bit straighter for the customer and leave it in a bit of a nicer condition. With it being a Mustang, it's been imported over. It's had a few bits of cellulose on it over the time, and it's had quite a few repaint. Well, it's had quite a bit of paint work before by the look of it, and we've had to do some quite sort of not extensive repairs, but some quite big skimming up areas, like you can see here on this wing, to try and straighten it out as best we can. So these 4 good build coats now will mean that when I come to get the block on it, I can get the long block, a 240, give it a real good solid block down, flatten it all right out, and then we can just get the DA with the 400 and the interface pad, and that'll just help us refine those scratches so that when we come to put the base coat on it, because this is getting done in a base coat and lacquer, the base coat will take nice, and we've got a nice smooth even finish for the base coat to take to. So that first coat, we didn't put it down too wet, so the fluid needle wasn't wound out too far. And then the second coat, we're going to wind the fluid right out, and as you can see here now, I'm going to be putting now a full closed coat over the whole car, and then basically just repeat this process as many times as you see fit. On a job like this, we're going to put 3 to 4 coats on. My spray gun of choice for this job is my good old trusty Devilbiss FLG5. This has got a 1.8mm tip in it, and the advantage of that is it gets a really good build on, and you can leave your primer nice and thick. So it's got a 4:1 Kapci high build primer, and then just 5% thinner, which just helps it flow on that a little bit nicer. We don't need any more than that. If you get it 20 to 25 psi with the 1.8 tip, just wind that fan full on, wind that fluid right out to the point where you're happy that you can go at a nice speed without getting any runs, and then as you'll see here on this wing, it'll put down a really heavy, nice, even coat, and you're going to get a really good build without spending hours and hours going around the car. Now, video wise, don't worry, I've not put all the coats in here because I don't want you sitting here for an hour watching me prime a car up, because you just get bored, and I'm pretty sure I'll get plenty of moaning in the comments. So we're going to include this coat and the last coat, just so you can get an idea of how I'm going about it, and at the end you can get a good view in the pictures of what it looks like afterwards, and when you're putting it on you can really see sort of how straight you've actually got it, which is nice. With it going on nice and heavy and nice and wet, it has got quite a bit of a flash off time, but that gives you a good bit of time then to have a look over it. You might see a few areas, you know, when it's wet like this, that you might think, oh well, you know, when it's all cured and it's all dried down, I might need to do a little bit more work there, or that section might need a bit more blocking than the rest. So it's always a good guide when it's nice and wet like this as well, to get your eye on it and you can really see how clean or it's come up, or maybe it hasn't. You know, because no matter how often you do cars, sometimes there is always that one bit that you miss. And when it's nice and wet like this, you might just get a good bit of an eye on it, and you know, you can note that down for when it's cured to come back and maybe tickle that bit up. Or you might see a pinhole at this stage, you know, so you can make a bit of a mental note now of any areas that might need a little bit more work, or might just need a bit of tickling up when it comes to the prep stage for paint. Now you'll probably notice as I'm going around that I've actually missed out the door shuts. That's purely because all I did was open the doors first, do the door shuts with I think 3 coats on the inside. They were alright. All I want to do is seal them up nicely so that when the base coat goes over, nothing's going to start reacting with all this old paint. So I did the door shuts with a couple of coats first, and then closed those doors too, because the doors themselves aren't going to be taken off and rehung. They're going to stay on for the paint job. It'll just save us a bit of time and a bit of labour cost for the customer. So then once they're done and they've had a quick flash off, I'll shut the doors, and then that's when I've started this video going around the outside, so you guys can get an idea of how I'm going about that. And also when you're going around a job like this where you're putting a lot of primer on and you've got a lot of coats to put down, doing the insides of the door shuts first does just help you a little bit as you're going around, because like now I can go around the outside of this car with ease and with a nice even coverage without having to worry about doing the quarter and then opening the door and going inside the door and then closing the door too and then doing the outside of the door. It just makes the job a bit easier. It doesn't really save any time, but method wise, you know, for getting a nice good even build on the outside, I think it just does aid you quite a bit if you just flip the insides of the door shuts over first, close them too, and then start putting it down on the outside like this. So as you can see, we're coming to the end of the first full coat now. Like I say, we did do 4 full coats, and as you can see, when I got round to the back end, that whole side there with a real good coat, that was a full cup. So it will take a lot of primer, but on a job like this, what I want to do is I want to get plenty of build on there so I can block this down really well to try and get it really nice and flat for the customer, and then still have enough primer left on there that I can give it a DA over with the P400 so that it's going to be ready for paint without having to reprime it again. And the build level will help you block it out, and the build level will also help you reduce the amount of cut throughs from the blocking stage. And the problem is, everywhere on a car like this that you get a cut through on your primer is going to be a potential area that you could get reaction and fry ups because of the kind of paint that's been under it before. Because obviously we're going to put fresh base coat on this with fresh solvents in that base coat, i.e. your thinners, and that can react with the old layers of paint underneath and start cause reaction and frying up. And on a job like this, it's just something that you really don't want, because it can cause you hours and hours of pulling your hair out. And I know because I've done it myself. So doing a job like this, getting a real nice build on it, helps you out in so many ways. And like you can see there on this wing now, this is the final coat. It's had the rest of the coats and this is now its final coat. And you can see from the kind of build on that wing now that it's really getting it nice and thick and it's nice and flat. Now this job, when we finished up painting it on this day, I put the boob on, gave it a good bake off for I think about half an hour, and then we left it in the boob overnight and did the same again in the morning. And then what we've done then is actually leave it for a week. So when you see part 2 coming up in this series of videos, the part 2 is actually going to be a week later. That'll give this primer any chance to really shrink back and settle down to a point where it's nice and cured and rock hard, so that when we start blocking this and we've painted it, that we're going to reduce the risk of it shrinking back because we've left it so long. If you did this and then you baked it off and you just went and blocked it out the next day, ran over it with a DA, then it's pretty safe to say that within a week of painting it, you are going to get shrink back on it. Also, as far as shrink back goes, the grade that you sand your repairs down to, if you leave 80 marks in something where you've maybe put a big bit of filler in or a big bit of stopper in and you've knocked the top off with an 80, and then you miss those and you don't go over it with something like a 180, then you're going to get shrink back no matter what you do, and it's going to sink into those 80 scratches and it's going to look a mess. So every repair you do, as much as sometimes it might seem tedious if you've got a car with a lot of repairs, get them down to about the 80% finished stage, and then when you're about 80% finished, switch it off, put a 180 on, and then when you come to do your primer, it's just another step to try and reduce that shrink back. So it's going to mean that you're going to end up with a cleaner job, and hopefully, you're going to eliminate the shrink back as best you can. And also it's going to eliminate the chance then of maybe having to redo part of it because it does shrink back that far that you can't get it out. So I'm going to leave this video here, guys. In part 2 we're going to go through the masking, the prep, and probably the base coat stage. So hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I'll get the part 2 up in the next few days. Don't forget, give us a like, give us a subscribe if you've enjoyed it. If you've got any comments about anything that you've seen, or you want any help or anything, feel free to post a comment below the video and we'll get back to you as soon as you can. Thanks, guys.